So, hello everyone, welcome back, and we're going to do a bit of a recap with this episode 3 before we jump into the Erica Kirk slash Lily slash Alice in Wonderland individual. Um, so, firstly, there's a few comments we have to get to, really
Mm-hmm.
pretty interesting comments. So, the first one is that Mihal says that the Obama gloves are mime gloves. Mimic and mime are closely related, both deriving from the Greek word mimos, meaning to imitate. And I said, yes, the mime is another connection, the representational nature of consciousness and the simulacra that is reality, or the mimetic nature, of it as an image of God as opposed to the inexplicability of God himself. And also this ties in with the semen, the ejaculate at the top, which is this sort of masculine limitability or limiting force, as opposed to the limitlessness of the the sort of all expansive, all encompassing womb of the feminine, this pure potentiality. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that the semen is the light that is refracted into the rainbow and is refracted into the pluripotency of life and into energetic disparity itself, right? And you mentioned something really just there before we started recording, Armunn. Do you want to repeat that regarding all of this?
Yes. First of all, I think I would like to translate and summarize what you said about the gloves of Obama. That means that he was a wanker, right? Because of the semen.
Exactly, yes. That means he's a wanker.
Anyway, humor aside, I would like to also say that a mime a mime is an illusionist, but the mime and illusionist professions would usually converge in the same people. Sometimes they would do mimicry, sometimes they would do conjuring tricks, as they were called. But it's an art that is, these fields intertwine, right? And of course, we can also consider that being a mime is a sort of illusionist of sorts, because you are performing, pretending to be in a certain situation, or pretending to be someone else, or that kind of thing. So it is a sort, or within the field of the illusionist. What I mentioned just before we started recording was that these are the same gloves, of course, that the character Mickey Mouse from Disney wears. And of course, there's that very famous, and I think one of the most well-known Mickey Mouse cartoons is the Fantasia one, right? Where he's the wizard apprentice that starts playing around with the master's wand and trying to have the basically the appliances, not the appliances, but the furniture and so on to do the cleaning and the
and
chores for him, right?
and the wand is similar to this idea of the phallus itself in a way, is it
Right.
not?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I think that Mickey Mouse, of course, in that particular cartoon, Mickey Mouse is wearing the dunce hat that all wizards wear in, some variation or another. And I think it is representative of the apprentice. In this case, Obama here appears with the doctors, or the what was it called, mortar,
Oh, more.
the hat,
Oh, the mortar board. Sorry, mortar
mortar
board.
board.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you can see the semen, the dispensation of the will
Mhm.
landing on that as well. Yeah, the glue
on
that
the
keeps reality
on the black
together.
square. Yeah, on the
Yeah.
black square. And so here he would be represented as the master. Of course, he's not a master per se, in the same way that, let's say, a 33rd degree Mason is not a master. He is called an ascended master, or whatever it is, but he is not a master within the script. He's simply someone with access, due to his proof of loyalty, to access to a bit more of the script than others, but he has no control over the script. He is a performer at a higher level. So that's basically what I said. I connected it to also Mickey Mouse, which could explain the ears that you were mentioning in the previous episode. His ears here seem very prominent, right?
Yes, yes, and yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, of course, all the politicians are verminous as well, so there may
Hmm.
be a connection there. But humor aside, again, there was something I came across, and I think it was when we were watching. Um, I think this came from when we were watching. What's that? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead,
Hmm.
and it's the idea of the pageant. So again, this ties
Right.
in with theatre, and we are talking about the alchemical psychodrama. But if you look at the pageant the etymology of pageant from late 14th century, pageant actually means a play in a cycle of mystery plays from the medieval
Mm.
Latin pagina. It's also where we get our word for page from. So, um, so what you're seeing surrounding this theatrical idea, and all of them are playing characters as well. Even the magician is a character. It's a character that, again, like the wand, which is the phallus, the dispensation of the will, and the sort of instrument of the mind in a deeper sense, and of the spine. Um, of course, that links with the serpent as well, this idea, but and of semen too, which is
Mm.
serpentine looking. It's this idea that you're sort of you're manipulating reality from a political level, right? But if you
Yes.
look at it from the metaphysical level, again with the mortarboard idea, it's that which binds all of the bricks or blocks. We saw that at the beginning. The sort of this material geometry all together binds it all together through the human ego, through the will, through all of that. This is why, of course, all political systems, which are theatrical in nature, they all seek to turn you fully into an audience member, a mere spectator, because you diffuse your will, and thus by you diffusing your will, your ego, and getting rid of the ego, you no longer can assert your agency. So therefore, they take over the sort of they become the masons of reality itself. They build the blocks up for you. They turn you into a block.
Yes.
It's their will that binds and glues all of reality together, bar you know, in spite of your own, right?
Yes, and it's important there to go even a step beyond, because it's not just the agency in terms of action, so how you behave in the world, but most importantly, the agency of how you think inside. So it is not like, a regulation that happens after thought, in the sense of, for example, you are not allowed to do this, but you are allowed nonetheless. I mean, they wouldn't interfere, that particular type of government wouldn't interfere with what you're thinking, right? The idea here is exactly to go a step beyond, is before you even make a decision to act, measuring the pros and cons, if this is against the law, maybe I'll get this consequence or that kind of thing, or if I do this action, I will receive a bonus, a reward for it from society and from government and etc. Before even doing that consideration, the idea is to interiorize. So you make it your own, the way of thinking that they present in the entire narrative. And this is why all of this is always, all encompassing. It fills every field and tries to present a consistent reality in the to the perception. You understand? So that even when the mind character, is faced with having to think, having to consider a decision, a reaction, whatever it is, it considers within already that framework, that black cube, right? Considers already within the limitations imposed upon, even before we get to the legislation part, the political part, in the sense of, the enforcement through laws, through policing, etc. Before that, the idea is that already the mind characters are limited within the sphere of their own psyche, right? So if people are able to, and this happens a lot in religion, right? If people are able to be encapsulated into a virtual perception world, for example, let's say that they would consider that they would get an impulse from their own individual authority, what I call the ego. I know other people use that word. Many people use that word, in my opinion, wrongly, but because ego means me. If they receive an impulse that in their structural, in their belief system, whatever, in their the perception, the all-encompassing perception that they have is considered a sin, right? That will be immediately, even before the decision is done, that will be immediately taken into consideration. Oh, I shouldn't do this because it's a sin, even if in the context that they're inserted, even if in the actual situation there, that would be the correct response, right? But it is immediately formatted as, okay, it's a sin I shouldn't do, right? And that is exactly what they want, right? So that the limitation occurs even before the decision emerges, because when the decision process is going on, it's already taking into consideration all the pros and cons that came before it, and that's where they want to install themselves. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, they want to they effectively want to control the collective psyche from basically its emission source. In that sense, is that what you're meaning? Yes.
Yes, it's like, okay, if uh, when you make a decision based upon past experiences, what you consider to be true, and you know, of course, the input. It should be the input of your individual authority. Of course, the individual authority is sort of cast aside by indoctrination. You're not supposed to listen to your individual authority, but give prevalence to, or priority, I mean, to external experts, right? But if in the other aspect, you are already able to, seep in, and you give an all-encompassing worldview before the actual decision
Exactly.
process.
Yes.
When the decision process comes, it will be within that worldview, right?
Yeah.
If I consider that I don't know, imagine a caste system. If I consider that I am in the caste of, I don't know, slaves or whatever, the decision process will never include perhaps uh, trying to do something that a slave can't do. You understand? Because that
Yes.
is my place.
Hmm.
Even before measuring the organic decision process. You understand? So the
Absolutely.
view the decision process is skewed even before it began by
Yeah.
the worldview, and so that was what I was trying to
No,
convey.
absolutely. It's the hyperstition. It's the hyperstition. So
Correct. Correct.
you're
Yeah.
effectively controlling people. You're turning them into self-fulfilling robots,
Right.
um, based around narrowing their own probabilities of potential pathways they may take within their decision making. There was a couple of other things we could mention on this, but in terms of the dragon or Draco, I will cover that with the Flight of Eros, because
Uh-huh.
there's a connection. In fact, we could probably spend an hour just on that alone. But there's a connection there too. That has to do with the Geist. That has to do with, again, the same idea. You're seeing with the phallus and the semen. Um, Even the persona, the idea of the will, the idea of, as you're saying as well, the controlling of the worldview, which is the instrument of the dispensation of the will itself of the state. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let me check if Yeah, Bush comes from the word mato, which is the original name for the full card, Lamat. Mato means bush. I looked it up. It's stated, and of course you're Portuguese, so you can correct me on this. In Portuguese, mato is brushwood, scrub, or uncultivated land.
Yes.
Portuguese or Galician, yeah.
Yes.
So bush, of course, in British or Australian English would be, of course, a term for this same idea, right? You're in the bush. Therefore, bush and mato or lamat, the madman, are symbolically connected there. So that was a good call by Mihal again. And he also mentioned this. Barack Obama is encoding the Barzakh. Barzakh, literally isthmus, is the crucial intermediate realm separating and connecting two opposing worlds. We'll get into this with the river Styx that the Antichrist figure moves down, such as spirit and body or God and creation. I was mentioned with Ben Balderson yesterday and several others, this idea of salt and oil, up and down, generation, contraction, polarities, sort of self-referential, paradoxical elements function as a third thing that holds them together. Imaginal world, alam at mital. This world exists as a barzakh where spiritual realities take on subtle forms, allowing them to be perceived or imagined. Sufi scholar Ibn Arabi views the barzakh as an ontological bridge, a necessary limit that allows interaction between opposites, light and shade, hence the black and white. On the Sufis as well, we'll see later on when the sort of Horus or dead boy character, he ascends to the moon. We'll get into all of that, but he does the dervish. He's dressed as a dervish dancer, which is part of a Sufi culture. So this reminds me of the Vesica Pisces, bringing together the light and the dark to form the third diamond, or the yoni shape, which is, of course, a sort of Hindu shape. So that's pretty much it. I think we have all of that covered. So now we'll head on without any further ado. So here we go.
Okay, if you can just pause there for a second. I know you want to talk about that graffiti as well. So that woman, the author calls her Lily, right? To me, of course, is the first impression I got is extremely similar to Erica Kirk. And Erica Kirk, like I said, would have been around 12 at the time of 9/11, which seems to be more or less the age of this character here in the animation. And she is sitting down with these grayed out, so with what usually is called the NPCs, right? That are, in my opinion, similar to the goat that is hypnotized in the beginning, but that is my opinion. And she is among them holding an apple. Now, the apple, of course, is the symbol of the temptation, right? The temptation of Eve, if we use the symbology in the Genesis. And she drops the apple, and from the apple that is divided in two emerges the lotus. I think it's a lotus, correct?
Is a lotus, yeah.
Which is the flower of rebirth, of, let's say, the new world, the new transformation. That's why Obama is sweating there, because that will bring about the new world. Now, of course, we're talking narratives. I don't think Eric Kirk has any of that, but the fact that she has a very interesting world stage character arch, because she appears as, first this traditional wife, very Christian, very God-fearing, as is usually said, and then into that, after the supposed theatrical assassination of Charlie Kirk, that you have covered extensively, also on Fakeologist, and that you've seen how theatrical it was. She has it seeps into her character the idea that she is behind his assassination, and that she was doing that to take over the movement that supposedly he created. And like I said, she was depicted, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was J.D. Vance that said that that phrase about this widow's tears will reach the world, or something like that, right?
Yes.
And so the apple was the temptation of, dragging people to her, and that temptation will bring about the new world that would be supposedly in opposition to the old world that Obama was supposedly trying to maintain. We're talking narratives here, right? But from this small scene, just this small segment of her appearing and dropping the apple, that is my initial reading. Please do present your views, and also I know you want to go into the graffiti and other things that will bring a new character
Yeah.
into the scene. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
funnily enough, there's actually Trump is also seen at that, but we'll go. I'll go from here, and then we'll jump back, and then we'll go through
Sure.
that again. I agree with what you're saying, absolutely. And remember as well, Erica Kirk took over the Turning Point movement. So what you're actually seeing, especially of the Psalm 23, which also encodes Donald, the name Donald in it, you can also see the lightning bolt, which is again indicative of the Shevrat HaKalim. The blue as well also is indicative of the heavens, that this is something that's almost fated to happen. And of course the light is on the right hand side, the side of Chesed, and it's pointing directly down to primarily the three. So again, it's this idea of the sort of trimorphic pattern of reality, of the formation of reality, of the dissolution of reality, and of the renewal of that reality. You see it in Kabbalah as the Simsum, the contraction, and then that, of course, goes to the Shevrat HaKalim, the shattering of the vessels, and then you go to the Tikkun, which is the rectification or the renewing of the world, and of course the world to come once the heavens and earth are renewed or reborn. You also see this, of course, with the idea that the Psalm 23 is outside of the indoctrination center of the school. So the idea is that well, of course, with Psalm 23, I'll just read it. So this is from the NIV, just to break down all of the sort of old Middle English. Quote, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I do apologize. That was the KJV. I'm pretty sure I have the NIV somewhere in my notes. That was the wrong one. But anyway,
It's
it's not too
present
bad.
day Scottish, right? So,
It is. It's present day
yes.
Scottish. You heard the accent there. So the idea is what you're seeing with that. Just to be really, really brief about it, is that Psalm 23 is its representative of sudden illumination through the destruction of ignorance and the false hope that
Yeah.
underpins the illusion of reality. Um, there are also, you see as well, 7 turns or waves to the lightning bolt, which is again another allusion to the Demiurgic Seven or the Saturnian essence. This also links, by the way, to Draco, but I'll get into that in another video because it's that'll be difficult to sort of preface. But so of which, of course, Saturn was the traditional seventh planet within the collection of planetary genii. This includes the sun and moon, of course. Something else to mention on that is that it states that now anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. And it states, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. We're back to the phallus or the wand again, right? The dispensation of the ego or the will, the spine itself. And those without a spine will not survive this conflagration. And those not outside of the narrative of education or indoctrination in the school will not survive it either. And what you're seeing as well with them, you see the windows, they're just reflecting back out. The idea is that, so firstly, it's implying that the indoctrination centers like schools are echo chambers, but it's also implying that they're completely illusory. That in fact, as you see with Psalm 23 is being implied there, that Lefebvre is basically stating that the apocalypse is not necessarily something to be survived through, physical prepping or geopolitical dominance or what have you, but it's actually an optical illusion to be walked through with sort of absolute internal sovereignty, an unwavering sense of who you are and your place within this within existence and within, of course, this sort of vision of God, right? And the idea as well is that this turning point after, of course, Erica Kirk drops the apple, this turning point, you start to see the disintegration of the ice. You're starting to see the waters again, right? Or the mercury, which of course is a reflective substance. Drops of water or mercury can reflect or so the belief is in alchemy, it can reflect the entire macrocosm within the microcosm. So you're starting to see the world in the longue durée that is subsisted and existed up to this point will begin to waver. It will begin to become more fluid. It will begin to become more natural as it disintegrates. And of course, as well, you can read there, Donald. Donald is written there. To mention too regarding this, there's something else I was wanting to get.
While you try to recollect, it's also important to note that name Donald in a very stylized and not obvious script there in the graffiti is basically the name, the tag name in that graffiti for the winter, right? And so he is, in a sense, the winter king, right? The winter, I mean, he was called king many times, as you know, and we've discussed in the past. He even said something that would be unthinkable for a US president to say, which was that he wouldn't mind being king or something like that, right? That he would establish, if it was allowed, he would establish a kingdom in the U.S. instead of a republic, which of course links back again to the comparison, the blueprint of the U.S. being that of Rome, where in that sense, Julius Caesar was the winter, well, not king, but the winter ruler before the really a tough winter that Rome would suffer with the segment that came later with the Claudian emperors. And again, we're talking narrative, right? But it seems that this is the blueprint being applied here for the U.S. In particular, right? That the winter, I mean, I think it was Biden that said that there was a winter coming or
dark
something
winter,
like that.
yeah.
Dark winter, yes. And that dark winter is, of course, a mention to the Winter King of Trump that has, it's an amalgamation of several characters, a bit of madman, a bit of statesman, a bit of imperialist, expansionist, even. But the idea here is to create a character that people can either adore, as some do, or loathe. If you're in the narrative, if you live within the parameters of the narrative, you are not indifferent to this character, right? Similar in that case to Adolf Hitler, right? You're not indifferent if you're in the narrative, if you live in that belief system. So I think here it's very significant that it's winter outside and that his name is the one tagged for the winter period of Rome, the winter period of the U.S. Blueprint, in my opinion. But I don't know if you recollected what you wanted to say.
I have, yeah, I found it in my notes. So I state this: at the end of destruction will come, but will come, but God shall remain eternal. This is what this is also stating. God is this again, the potential, like an unbroken chain or a never-ending story. The light will always emerge from the darkness. Once the darkness vanquishes itself, once the book seems finished, a new chapter comes forth to tell the story of another age and another generation. The cycle begins anew continually, and this is the truth that is contained within the circularity of the heavenly bodies. We live within the sort of shell of the corpse of the remnants of the old cycle continually. So we're living within the shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death. This is what this is implying. You see this, of course, with I was speaking to Ben Balderson, and we brought up this point regarding Ymir, right? All of the world is created from Ymir's corpse, of whom he was betrayed by the three brothers. You're seeing the trimorphic protonoia there again. Odin, consciousness, Vili, that of will, and Ve, that of the demarcation of boundaries, the space in between things, if you will. So the I and the I, the 11, is also found within the interior pillars of the fornix of the brain. Two fibrous pillars in the mind that cover the thalamus and hypothalamus, deriving from the Greek and meaning the inner chamber, or the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies. And that sits between these two pillars. This is basically the seat of the soul, the throne of God, if you will. These pillars of Hercules are the pillars of Boaz and Yakin. Boaz meaning he is strength, and Yakin meaning he will establish. This is also, by the way, the anointing. I shall anoint my head with oil. The idea is that you're anointing your spine and your mind with cerebral spinal fluid, which is sort of symbolic of the idea of ascension. And ascension is this idea that you understand the sovereignty of yourself, perhaps the personal and a wider universal power that you contain as a breath of God. Thus, the two characteristics of God, and by extension of us, for we are made in his his image, his representation, as it is translated, and this means spiritual image and not a material one, of course. By the way, this is also depicted upon Abraxas, which is also found within the Bible, and that is the crook of the shepherd and the rod of iron, the flail, to which is seen depicted within the sort of pharaohs and their accoutrements of their pharaonic sovereignty and authority. And this is the dunamis, or the strength or potential, more precisely put. This goes back to Oz, remember, Hebrew for strength, and Sophia, which is wisdom, or the ability to establish through self-knowledge and self-generated creativity. So basically the shepherd's crook is that which fundamentally should control the rod of iron. It shouldn't be above the rod of iron, which is, of course, what we see with Abraxas, because that's how the cycles maintain themselves. The idea is that the rod of iron is the animalistic part of man, the sort of untamed part of him. And the crook of the shepherd is that which, of course, domesticates and guides, the wisdom that guides that animalism, that pure dynamic power, the dunamis, the strength, the potential. Of course, as we see for Orion and Abraxas, they have the club or the flail above that of the shield, or the pelt, or of course, or the crook of the shepherd, right? So meaning that they are, well, like Orion, they're headless. They lack any wisdom. They're purely of an animalistic state, and therefore they will continue blindly, like the Ursa Major or the Ursa Minor, you know, in their circumpolar traversal or wandering like the fool round, of course, the gateway of the soul, right? Continually, cycle after cycle, generation after generation. So, of all sentient creatures, any who can be classified as such must possess and display these two characteristics. The best amongst those creatures display them in sort of equal measure with one another. This is the coincidentia positorum as well.
Right.
This, furthermore, is also found within the two pillars of the Sephiroth. At the left is Bina, we all know this. The right is Hokmah. So one is understanding, one is wisdom. And of course, the one in the middle is self knowledge, the potential, the Da'at. So there's something else I did mention here.
Isn't
Please jump in.
isn't the name Donald in old Gaelic meaning the king of the world?
Uh,
So
I
Rex
actually
Mundi?
will. I'll have to look up that.
I think it was from
But
Domnall, right?
let me look up the etymology there. Yeah, Domnall. Yeah, that's where it's from. Yeah, world ruler. You're right. Yes,
Yeah.
or
Rex
world
Mundi. Yeah.
mighty.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, as well, interestingly, Don with Donn. I think that has a different etymology. So don't quote me on this, but uh, dawn also means darkness or blackness, similar to Krishna in
Mm.
that of Hinduism, if I recall correctly. But it's also the god. It's the name of the god of the underworld, Dawn, and of war and death. So similar
Mm.
to Set in that regard, or Set Typhon. Interestingly, too, that you've brought up that, that's interesting because somebody was mentioning about the Shin letter, and this traces back, of course, to Shiva's Trishula or Poseidon's trident. Now, Poseidon itself is a composite of two Attic Greek words, which mean, you guessed it, world ruler or lord of the earth. This
Yes.
goes all the
Mm.
way back to Enki, Lord Key Earth, Lord of the Earth. He supposedly aided mankind. He assisted mankind in surviving the cycles, building an ark to survive the cycles, as you see in the Atrahasis myth, though he goes by different names in Akkadian and Sumerian as well. So
Mhm.
the idea is that Enki, of course, similar to Amaru, Baal, these storm and war deities, uh, the idea of the world ruler, the lord of the earth, the idea of Orion as well, or Abraxas, that they are the club wielder that rises the club above the head or above the shepherd's crook, above wisdom and above the seat of the soul. He is attempting to utilize techne or technology to survive the cycles and to escape Leviathan, escape the egg, escape the world through purely his own sort of will to power, right? Through the masculine will, if you will,
And
and
do
and
you think?
that's embodied in technology.
I'm sorry. Do you think that this we're talking about this scene, but then also, your opinion in general? Do you think that Donald, so Trump, will represent in the narrative the last of the Republican, let's say, the last of the rulers outside of a monarchy type, so a more encompassing and centralized power structure for the Roman blueprint of the U.S.?
The US will transition into an empire proper. Is that what you
Mhm.
mean? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and we'll live the winter there, let's say. And so the whole idea
Mm.
of setting up the empire instead of the republic would be to survive the winter, of course, in narrative terms.
Yes, I mean, whether it actually successfully transitions to an empire or not. It really already is, again, similar to the Roman blueprint. But
Mhm.
I stated in my first book that if Trump doesn't become the proto-Caesar figure, which he was at the time of writing in like 2019, 2020, he will actively become the Caesar figure. He is this Caesar archetype. You can even
Yeah.
see it in the way that he's sort of devolving in his character, and his character arc is taken on this development, which is he's appearing as though he's lofty, he's haughty, boisterous. He lacks any sort of civility. You're actually starting to see a loss of profanity used in these press releases as well. I mean, he was talking about, yeah, we've defeated Iran, and then he says we've basically beat the shit out of them. And you're saying, what?
Yeah.
He sounds like a barbarian ruler, not the
Yeah.
ruler of the hegemon of civility and of the greatest civilization known to mankind, and the world empire, essentially. Or the free world, really. So he is this sort of warlord character, right? Of course, similar to Caesar, he doesn't have to be a great uh, uh, leader. I mean, Caesar, arguably in a lot of his campaigns, got really quite lucky, and he had this sort of tenacity and will to power. He just wouldn't give up. Of course, he never got to go to Parthia, so we don't know if he would have won against the Parthians, who were, put it this way, far more militarily advanced than the Gallic tribes at the time.
Yeah.
So he might
Well,
have got his ass handed to him, but but it's
let's see
similar
if
to.
in the narrative there will be a Cassius playing the same role that was played in that particular story.
Oh, Brutus.
Um,
Brutus, you mean?
yes, but there was a Cassius that was the main conspirer, wasn't it? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
I think there was a Cassius as well. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't recall now.
Yeah, but in any case, yeah. So I think that it
Mhm.
is whether or not elections continue in the U.S. after this term. I think it will never be. I mean, it's already not the same that it was before, but I think it will never be the same, and there will be a very different structure of government set up in the U.S. and those aligned with the U.S. That will form a bloc, in my opinion. And of course, we've talked before about the Orwellian 1984 blocks that may form as a temporary transition to the unification, to represent the dangers of
Yeah,
separatism. The unification that would probably come with the AI God, and therefore my reading of that Jesus character that appears later on in this video as the AI absorbing the history, which is all a story, but nonetheless absorbing it as fact, so that it can rule well, right? So that it can rule fairly
and perpetuate the cycles of those
and
stories as well.
perpetuate. Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But anyway, I don't know if you have more to say about the scene, or if we should
I have
proceed.
one last
Okay.
thing, and that's regarding the idea of the mind, and this goes back to the three ventricles of the heart. So, of the thalamus, the inner chamber is described as, quote, the third ventricle can be described as a cuboid structure that has a roof, floor, and four walls, anterior, posterior, and two lateral, similar to the other brain ventricles. The main function of the third ventricle is to produce, secrete, and convey cerebral spinal fluid. So, again, uh, what you're saying with the tree of life as well is it's not just an ascension; it's sort of a descending of God to
Mm-hmm.
meet the sort of amplified emanation of man, in the Tiferet, at the Tiferet, which is the central point of that. And Tiferet, of course, in Hebrew means heart. This is, of course, why you're seeing the hearts all about the place too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the two sort of mix. Hence, thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. This also relates to the Mashiach, because mesh is the crocodile oil that was used to anoint a new pharaoh. Of course, the crocodile is also the green dragon, or that great dragon. The idea of the primeval creator of this illusion, the demiurgos, Yaldabaoth as well. Again, I'll
And
get
if
into
you
that more
and
with
if you recall
those.
correctly, in our tarot series, when we were talking about the Fool, there was a version of tarot that instead of the white dog in the Fool card had a crocodile.
Had a crocodile, yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, this ties in with the crook of the shepherd. Very,
Right.
very observant, because again, getting back to Draco and the Geist is this idea of an invasive sort of inframing of reality, right? Again, we would call it the intellect, the materialism. It's not just wisdom in and of itself, right?
Hmm.
Um, it has a part to play in the perpetuation of the cycles, but it allows us some sort of sovereignty or agency over them too, right? But as stated here, it is he who is the judger who will either permit the self to the path beyond or into the sleeping death of the soul. But light must be kindled within the darkness, and one must learn to see with that sight which is beyond the eyes. And he must look at the world through a new lens and see beyond its constrictive haze. And by the way, the Green Dragon Tavern was where the Sons of Liberty set about, fomenting the American Revolution. And by the way, you were correct. It's Gaius Cassius Longinus. He was one of the major instigators of the Caesarian assassination. And so the Green Dragon also links with the vision of Hermes or Thoth, the Atlantean, as he's been styled, of Poimandres. And Poimandres quite literally means in Greek the shepherd of man. So it is the crook. It's literally wisdom. It's the mind that's been reactivated, so to say, that is in control of the animalistic self, not necessarily to transcend or to imbue oneself with sovereignty, but to utilize this intellect, this newfound superpower, if you will, between reflexive consciousness and being, to literally control and manipulate the manifestable world. Right. This is, of
Which
course,
is
dark sorcerers and such. Mhm.
which is the same symbology of the horse rider. So the knight, for example, right, where the chivalry code would be to control the impulses, the animalistic impulses. But the backdrop meaning of that would be something that is used, and I think I've mentioned that before. Something that is used in, I think it's voodoo, where it's New Orleans voodoo, I believe. So Louisiana type, where they would say that when they incorporate a spirit, so a medium is being possessed by a spirit, it is being ridden like a horse, right? So the body is the horse and the rider is the spirit, right? So in that sense, the control of the horse, right, to master the horse, make it do what you want to do, is the the idea behind the spirit riding it. And of course, it implies that the spirit that is riding the horse, that is riding that animal that you were saying, that animalistic impulse, is not necessarily its own spirit, right? It can be an external source, an external construct, let's say, a superego of sorts, a sort of surrogate individual ego that dominates and controls and sort of tempers that animal into its own will, right? To make it do its own will, so that the rider can actually ride the horse successfully.
Interestingly, you see that same sort of pattern in the script of Alexander the Great with Bucephalus in
Right.
a weird way. And that also ties in with the shadow, because Bucephalus, of course, Alexander realized Bucephalus was scared of his own shadow. So again, you could even tie that in to the shadow of the valley. the valley of the shadow of death, which is this Bucephalus was the animal part of man that is scared of his own mortality. But of course, Alexander is this sort of higher essence, this essence of chivalry, or interestingly, Bushido, right? So it's
Yes.
so yeah, it's absolutely. There's some just really quickly as well. He established the teachings he gleaned from this interaction Hermes did with the emerald tablets, of which emerald is likewise green. Green is also the color of Midgard or Middle Earth, the middle plane between heaven and hell, and likewise the middle color of the visible light spectrum. It's the color of spiritual unripeness as well. The dragon too links with the Sumerian myth of Marduk slaying Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the deep, and the mother of dragons, and she is typically associated with the chaos of creation. By the way, we saw a lot of predictive programming of this esoterically in the Game of Thrones series. The mother of dragons, of course, which was Kylise. What was her name? God, I forget the name now.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know the blonde
yeah,
one. Yes.
yeah, the blonde one. And then, of course, the Song of Ice and Fire, those ideas. You also see as well the 7 pins on the green dragon. That links back to this sort of astronomical esoteric mythology surrounding Draco and the fallen planet of Earth and the axial tilt. But the idea is that this is symbolic of a sort of inverted wisdom. Again, that's found with that of the crocodile, the Mashiach as well, right? Of course, we went over that, and of Draco, the dragon itself, the creator of the illusion, effectively. So yeah, I mean, and then of course the brain looks like the nuke, which is the nut. Hence, when everything goes nuclear, when you have a nuclear war, this is the Chevret HaKalim again. This is literally the nuke, or the nut of the earth, the walnut, if you will, getting cut in twain, the hemispheres separating and dividing, the separatio of the alchemical process. So to continue on, so we just literally blink and you'll miss it. That there is that flower right at the left of her is, and I'll have to get the name of it because I just looked it up actually. A Plurumia God, it's somewhere. I literally just had it. So it's similar to the lily in the idea, in its ideas being presented. That's a plumeria. So that is a plumeria right at the left-hand side. So the common name, it's also known as a frangipani, has a much more colourful and aristocratic origin. It comes from the Marquis Muzio Frangipani, a 16th century Italian nobleman. He created a highly popular musky perfume used to scent gloves. Again, we're back to gloves.
Yeah.
When the Pluremia flower was later discovered by Europeans, its natural intoxicating fragrance so closely matched the Marquis's famous perfume that they named the flower after him. Interestingly, the Italian surname Frangipani literally translates to break bread. So frangere equals to break, panis equals bread. Again, that's the breaking of bread is the Last Supper.
Yes.
Before the crucifixion of the Christ, or of the, again, of mankind, of the quintessence of the spirit, right? It goes through this transmutational process. Because the name frangipani is tied directly to the flower's heavy, intoxicating scent, its esoteric meaning often leans into alchemy, aromatherapy, and the subconscious. The scent is believed to evoke deep emotional healing, sensuality, and inner peace. And various folk magic and esoteric practices. The fragrance of frangipani is thought to attract spirits and divine energies in Southeast Asia. In their folklore, the intense nighttime scent is associated with spirits, vampires like the Pontianak, and the veil between the living and the dead. This is something we also see with the Greek idea of the midnight, right? Again, the breaking down of the veil of the living and the dead. And so the name breaking bread, some modern spiritual interpretations associate frangipani with community, nourishment, nourishment of the soul, the sharing of spiritual gifts, and also known as the Plumeria, named after Charles Plumier, a French Catholic monk and esteemed botanist. He made several voyages to the New World, right? So you have this idea of transition from the old to the new there, documenting hundreds of new plant species for the European world. In many esoteric traditions, the plumeria is a symbol of enduring life. This is largely because a plumeria branch can be cut from the tree and still continue to blossom and grow for months without soil or water, so it's immutable, like the spirit. It represents the soul's ability to survive and thrive even when severed from its physical or material sources. In Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist cultures, plumeria trees are frequently planted around temples. They symbolize devotion, dedication, and the eternal nature of the divine and of cycles. In Hawaiian and Polynesian traditions, the flower is heavily associated with creation, spring, and the birth of new cycles. It carries a deeply positive and welcoming energy, many have said. So yeah, that's what the frangipani means there, as you can see on the left. Of the rose is quite literally, and if I can find the bloody thing in my notes, I have too many notes on this thing. It's hard to actually navigate around.
I still remember your 200 pages notes. So
oh no, this is 278. So
oh, dear.
I've been writing this for years now, but these are just things that come to me, and I've only organized maybe 40 pages, and the rest are just all over the shop. So in the Zohar, the rose of 13 petals represents the Shekinah, the divine presence or divine feminine, and the congregation of Israel, of which the belief is in their galut, or their process of exodus. The Shekinah is within them, but in a sort of slumbering state. So they need to, again, she's also the Shekinah here. Erica Kirk is also the Shekinah. She has to kill the Kirk, kill the church, as we see at the end of this film, to escape the material bounds, for the spirit to escape the religion, the religio, the ligature, the binding, the strangulation of the material. So that's the idea there. But
I'm just noticing something. Are you able to zoom in on that? No. I don't know if you have that ability to zoom in, but look at her cheek.
No,
it seems to have the same crescent as
I was
Obama
going.
did.
No, that's actually the full circle.
Oh, is it?
So so Obama's black, but she's white, right? So the idea is the black and the white, the light and the dark.
So she's the sun and he's the moon. All right. Okay.
Exactly. And the moon as well is the crescent, which is it's like a semicircle. It's a partial cycle, because the idea is that, again, like the green dragon, which is this inverted spirit or inverted wisdom, the Geist, it wants to mean it craves the material. It craves the worldviews and the representations of the image of God that has come to sort of identify with. It doesn't want the full cycle of purification, which is the full circle of the sun. Sorry, man.
No, in Germanic, I believe, and if there are any Germans out there, correct me if I'm wrong. The sun is feminine and the moon is masculine. It's the other way around. So that could be playing a part there. And also, if you note where the flower is designed back there, it's on a maze. You can barely see it, but it's a maze. You see there? On the wall? The wall is a maze.
Oh, yes. Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. Right. Yes.
So it's the maze of the spirit set upon the maze of existence. Yeah.
My God. Bloody hell. I tell you, you don't have to go with Specsavers. Your eyes work perfectly well. I didn't even notice that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's the labyrinth. So that'll link with the Minotaur as well. The
right.
Who I believe was Asterion. Was it Asterion who changed in to the Minotaur? Asterion means the starry one. The idea is it's the same sort of duality we've been playing with here in the symbolism, in the metaphysics, which is that man has two metaphysical states simultaneously inherent within him, which is one of a sort of, again, like Castor and Pollux, it's one of Pollux, a hidden light, and I forget what Castor means now. It's in my notes somewhere. But that's the more mutable nature of man. So he is caught in this sort of stasis between the formless and the formed state. Hence the labyrinth, right? Because he's sort of he's in a state of inertia, spiritual involution, running from his animalistic spirit, running from the Geist, which is the adversary of the soul, that which is of a higher or transcendental quality, which attempts to devour the soul. It attempts to devour the soul because the soul is that connection to the limitlessness of all things, similar to the Faustian mentality. The Faustian mentality wants to conquer the infinite, similar to this idea of the Minotaur.
I don't know if it has any bearing on this, but castor, so castor in Portuguese means beaver. And the beaver is the one that cuts down trees to build dams and therefore change the course of the river, or alter the water flow. Let's say the animal that is able to build dams and therefore create an environment for himself. Let's say, do you think that would have a bearing? Because castor in Portuguese means beaver.
Interesting. Greek has the same word or root there. Castor, I believe it would be the pronunciation, meaning beaver, passing through Latin castor, Old French, and into Middle English up until the 14th century, was utilized to describe the animal of beaver. It is closely tied to, of course, the mythological character, but it's the Greek word as well for wood or to excel. So absolutely, yeah. So the beaver itself almost is similar to the Geist. It's similar to the inframing of reality through stories, through the dams, which are effectively gateways or toll booths, like what we're seeing with the digital world, which is this control of the tech bros, right? The corporate overlords of the dark enlightenment, trying to control the access to information.
Yes, to build the dam on the river of information in that sense, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So this is how they control and manipulate reality through, of course, the control of water. They try to turn water into a stationary, inert thing through the dam, which is similar to the ice, the idea of the ice as well. Did you want to make a comment there, man?
No, I was just thinking, so bush, dick, beaver, I mean, I think we're onto something here.
We are onto something. Yeah. Somebody says we should have these things on like
On
a
a
t-shirt.
t-shirt. Yeah, I read that one.
Start
Yeah.
selling
That
merch.
was a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
There's the other one. Yeah. Are you a, I don't know. Are you a dick, a bush, or a beaver?
Yeah.
I don't know. We can brainstorm about that, but yeah, absolutely. So also, by the way, the rose, it was also found in Leave the World Behind. The character who survives it in the bunker is called Rose. And the rose comes from the Rosicrucian, or Rosy Cross, this idea. The rosiness, or the rose itself, is a placeholder for that invisible, sort of ineffable, incommensurate color and emanation, which is beyond, or source really, which is beyond the seventh chakra of the purple or the magenta, which we saw with Obama's purple tassel. Now we're moving to the rose. And so the idea is that the I-in, the absolute nothingness or pure potential, must undergo sympsum or contraction to create a void where the finite reality can exist. The petals of the rose represent the subsequent sephirot or emanations, concentric layers of reality unfolding from the initial divine spark. And you see this as well with the Dat Rosa Mel Apibus, which is a Rosicrucian adage. And it's also part of a very famous illustration from the Rosarium Philosophorum, the philosophy of quite literally the rosary or the rose. This is why you have rosary beads as well, right? But the idea is that it literally means dat rosa mel apibus is the bees. The bees get the honey from the rose, or something along those lines, or the bees get their sustenance from the rose. So the idea is that, again, we're playing with the same duality, that man is two, not one, which is the bee is the drone. That is the sort of geistological potential of man locked into sort of hive mind, a hive structure of reality. But at the same time, they have the problem that they still need to, of course, gain their sustenance from
Hmm.
spirituality. Society must gain its sustenance from spirituality, from the limitlessness of the feminine, and the Semitic sort of
But,
ideation of it.
but the rose then could represent life itself. And here we're talking about life not merely in the biological sense, but in the sense of, being internally, psychologically alive. And if I recall correctly, in Citizen Kane, the word was rosebud, right? That was his last word before he died. So, in the sense of, departing from that life, the life of feeling alive, not just the biological life. Could that be? Am I onto something, or is it just a long shot?
Oh no, absolutely. It's life. It's the source of life. Yeah, that's what it
Mm.
symbolizes. So it's the thing that will exist beyond all of the cycles. It's that thing that is infinitely immutable. It's that which makes the entire cycles complete. It is the beginning and the end, and of course that which is beyond both. Um, and yeah, so it's a sort of representation of that. Another representation you find in pop culture is the peril.
Mhm.
So you see various iterations of this. Most of the time, uh, the character will be called Grace, right? Or the character will be called Margaret. Margaret is peril, I do believe, in Greek. There's a few other sort of plays on words, but if you trace the etymology back of the character's name, you'll see that it means peril. Interestingly, if you do recall that, was it Ralph Fiennes movie? I think it was what was the chef or something? I think it was called 2022. The Again, that is all about this same idea of disintegration and this esoteric alchemical transmutation of the soul. Interestingly, through, of course, this sort of weird and wonderful story of food and a chef's stress regarding that, and class divide and all of this. But the one woman that gets out of there, the one woman that's true and authentic, uh, I believe her name translates to peril. I forget her name now. I think it might be Margaret or something. Let me look that up.
That
Um,
that actually reminded me of another movie, but I don't recall the title. Let me ask Sayo. Sayo, what is that Swedish or Danish movie about the cook?
The Babette's Feast.
Babette's Feast. Babette's Feast. You should look up that movie and watch it, man. You'll find some interesting things there about exactly what you just mentioned.
Interesting. So that perhaps has been used before. It was called the menu, pardon, and her name's Margot or
Hmm.
Margot. And again, it's the same idea as Margaret. Nicholas Holt's character, he's the boyfriend of this woman, and of course he dies because he's completely mad and sort of taken over by the idea of the chef and the food. The chef Slovak, his the etymology of his name is interesting as well. Basically, he's the demiurge himself.
Hmm.
But Tyler, of course, relating to that position of the of in masonry,
The
and
caretaker.
take
Yeah.
absolutely and taking on
Mm.
this idea of the harbingers, the caretakers that are zealots, that are completely inundated with eating the sweetness of the promise and the allure of the eschatology. Um, this sort of animalistic, geistological intellect or wisdom, this inverted wisdom.
For
He
for a
dies in
different
the end.
for a different interpretation of that, I really do
Mm.
suggest to you and the viewers that movie. It's called Babette's Feast. Put it in your notes or look it up. It's either Swedish or Danish. I'm not sure exactly, but one of the two. And it depicts. Well, I'm not going to go into it, not to spoil it, but you will find some similarities with what you've said.
Very interesting. I'll check that. I'll check that one out.
Babette's Feast. Yeah. Really good movie, by the way.
1987 Danish movie.
Danish. Okay. Mm-hmm.
There's something else I was going to get to here. I won't go over the fruit because you've pretty much already stated it. It's this idea that she's giving away the sort of Geist, the forbidden knowledge itself, which is this idea that man can know anything, can acquire sort of the reins of the objective reality merely through the aperture of the subjective Geist, the inframing of the intellect, the inverted wisdom, the inverted sort of mind.
And by dropping that onto the checkered board, onto the checkered floor, she unleashes the lotus, which is the rebirth, right? So yeah, in the narrative, I think she will have an important part to play. She already has in a way, but well, I think we'll see more of her in the world stage, unless I'm, very off target here. But that would seem to be the prediction being made here. And if they predicted her semblance, they will certainly predict the actions that the character will take.
Exactly. And we'll see later on just here, the rows of the 13 petals in the Zohar. Again, this is linking to Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiacal sign. The idea of that thing which is beyond the bounds of man, which is the sort of again the source of life itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see this. She's within the 12 of the zodiac, the 12 of the months as well. This links geopolitically, this scene, but you notice that she is beyond that. She is the sort of unique character, the authentic one between in that. You also see the stag at the left-hand side. He is leaping. The stag is a symbol of the soul. You see that in the Splendor Solace. With the antlers as well, it's the sort of assertiveness over the seasons itself, because of course the stag's antlers are seasonal and they shed continually too. And just
if you move the movie a bit forward, he's bleeding, isn't he? Or the stag, isn't he sort of bleeding? Or although it's bleeding gold, but
he may be bleeding. I've interpreted it as it's either autumn leaves or like embers from a fire. And he's like on fire. He's almost like the phoenix himself within the autumn, which is the fall. And of course, the fall in the northern hemisphere takes on this great mosaic of reds and browns and colors indicative of fire itself. But the fire is almost the fall, the purification, the little purification prior to the winter, the desolate winter. And just really quickly as well, you see at the end, divide. So within the vines, on the left-hand side, again, because it's of judgment and sternness, it's very straight. The roots are straight. At the other side, because it's of passion, it's of chesed, of mercy. It's far more entangled, rhizomatic, far more wild and such.
Wild, yeah.
It's this idea you see in the Zohar between the great conflagration and the great battle that will come between that of Gevurah, Esau, Edom, the West, and that of the East or Ishmael, Islam, which are more spiritual, more passionate about their spirituality, at least their religion, and they're more sort of grounded, right? They're less inundated with luxury and this sort of urban living. The rabbit as well, follow the white rabbit, Neo, that relates to the moon and this sort of secret of the moon. And again, as we've spoken of previously, the secret of the moon is that it's its own self-luminary. So it eventually realizes that at the end. The idea is that man comes to a realization that he is both of these polarities, be it of the animal and the divine, and thus he must, to survive and to gain sovereignty within the cycle and to gain sovereignty over the illusion of the apocalypse of Armageddon, he must understand that he he can transcend beyond that. He can become his own self-luminary. He doesn't have to rely upon the sun or the sun behind the sun, this idea of the world script, the manipulated reality. I don't know
Right.
if you have any other things you want to mention before we get
I
through
would
some
I
more
would
stuff.
mention something that I already mentioned in passing in the last episode, which was she is sitting on the queue, which is true for this character. I mean, she was sitting on the queue. The queue here being that sort of movement. I don't know what to call it exactly, but that movement of supposedly reading messages, spiritual messages, and the in Trump's and people related to Trump, that became sort of associated with MAGA as well, right? And MAGA, of course, in Portuguese and I believe in Latin would mean the magician, the female magician. A maga means that she might be one of the characters representing this magician of the queue that she is sitting on, right? And that's where the transformation for, in this particular case, the U.S./Rome would come from. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, well, Maga as well is also the crocodile demon of ancient Egypt. There's little known about it, but for a good couple of hundred years, it was within the sort of set Ra story, where of course Ra journeys into the underworld, and he does this continually, night after night. And Set, necessary evil, spears a pep, which is the serpent of pure unbridled chaos and sort of centripetal disillusion. The idea was that Maga, the crocodile, would carry the boat, or he would support or prop up the boat of Set, and who was carrying the sun, or Ra. The idea is that the sun is the material sun. You actually see it here. Do you notice the point, and you'll notice the circle of the sun. So
Right.
the idea is that that point is the sun behind the sun. That's the zero order state, and so that's the soul. And the sun itself is this sort of again, it's like the corona, as opposed to that point, as opposed to that source of soul, or the sun. The circle is the corona. It's the effects, right? It is, of course, linked to the royal and sort of dynastic control, the dynasties of world blueprints that are utilized as well, to maintain these cycles. So the notion is, with when we go into that dark winter, Set, which is the necessary chaos of the preempting of all of this that we see, all of this that we're about to see go on within the world, that carries the material sun, which is, again, a representation of the sun behind the sun, the source, the soul. It is the Geist. It's literally the world blueprint. It's that which controls mankind and maintains the cycles themselves. And of course, that's propped up, interestingly, in at least several renditions and retellings of this very famous Egyptian or Kemetic story, is held up by Maga, which is a crocodile. Again, there's the crocodile. But later on, it became just purely evil. It became a very evil character. Basically a character of chaos and strife and death. And at certain places in ancient Egypt, whenever they got famine, they would blame it on Maga, interestingly. So I don't know, are we going to blame Maga for the global famine, or the global economic collapse? I don't know if there's a
they won't be
connection there.
popular. They won't be popular
No.
for sure, because of course, the connection to the Caesar figure. So, like I said, some will love, adore, some will hate. I mean, it's not a matter of that there's really a gray area there. If people are within the narrative, they will either love, adore, or hate. They will not be indifferent to that figure, and nor to their followers, the MAGA in this case also associated with the Q. But it's interesting that in my, intuitive looking at this, it really brings to mind the Q. That little dot outside really seems to be forming a stylized Q of sorts. But, well, it might just be me. But in any
No,
case.
I agree as well, because the Q letter is the 17th letter, if I do recall, so that relates to the star. And what you're seeing as well is, again, linking this to QAnon. I mean, even QAnon, right? Put that all together, Canaan. It's, I mean, these people literally laugh at us all. It's, and even, you remember he stated, I'm going to drain the swamp. Well, of course, where the crocodiles live, right? The swamp. But interestingly, see if you flip reverse MAGA, we've seen a lot of reversal of or palindromes of English words, but if you reverse MAGA, you get agam, and that is the Hebrew for marsh or swamp. So, I mean, these people are just, they I can't believe the QAnon thing actually took off. It's, it's so, I mean, the only real exercise I get nowadays is just shaking my head in disbelief at all of this. I mean, it's how did this happen?
Their supposedly spiritual side, because I don't know if you've seen that they do some prayers together or something like that. And that general, what was the main general that was mentioned in the Q thing? Oh, I forget his name.
Oh,
General.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I forget his name now.
Yeah, but that general was also preaching a certain prayer about the ascended saints or the ascended masters or the ascended forces or whatever, which is absolutely theosophical.
That's theosophical,
right? So
yeah.
it has not. I mean, okay, I admit that to me, symbolically, Christianity as is sold can be interpreted also in a theosophical way, especially in the New Age kind of thing. But supposedly at its backdrop, in its skeleton, it is supposedly opposed to theosophy, right? It's got nothing to do with the evolution. Things are in God's hands, not in an evolution of whatever, right? So it's interesting that they played that card there with all the Q Christians that have become something else.
Remember as well, see when the goat came out of the box, there was also the Simpson there, but it looked like a Q. So Q begun all of this. This was the beginning of the end. The Q movement, the QAnon. We're going back to Canaan, and in fact, we are going back to Canaan because you're even seeing the Baal idea making a comeback. So, it equals 17. I mean, that even links with some, sort of other events. I won't go into them because this will definitely get taken down from YouTube if I go into those. But you see it constantly, this Q or 17 as well. There'll be like 17 victims of a tragedy or something like that. That basically that's relating to this notion you're seeing on the star tarot card, which is we've went over it. It's basically the notion of like what you see with in the Kabbalah. Basically, the Shekinah falls to earth, falls to Malkuth. That Malkuth is almost the emergence of Shekinah, this divine feminine, which is the soul. And this is what you see when she lets go of the apple and it falls onto the black and white. It's the idea of the soul. It's again similar to the goat concept. The soul is fallen to earth. It has to undergo this, like what you're seeing, this bifurcation itself, right? This division. Hence why you have divide at the other side. We've went over the lily. I think we went over that last time, did we not? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
so
but it was a flower of death. Well, a flower associated with death. Did you have anything more on the lily?
No, other than it's just basically related to the hexagram, which itself is basically the seed of life. and this is the sort of fractalization of the divine in its representational or conscious form. So you'll note. So just to get to this interesting sort of 12 sort of stone statuettes. Now, so firstly, it begins with the yin yang, as you can see right at the left-hand side. Now, you'll notice the barbed wire. Now, that's a sort of dead giveaway, by the way, because firstly, it indicates a sort of a rough road, so to say, a rough journey, but it also indicates the elliptic. And you saw that in Epstein's temple at the ceiling. It showed the elliptical wave as well, right? Now, again, this is the idea of the cycles, the sine wave. Again, sin or shin was also a name for the moon in ancient Hebrew. It was a moon goddess as well, I do recall, or a moon god rather, in Sumeria too. You'll notice the third one in, you'll notice he's sitting like Trump, almost. And Trump sits like that all the time. He puts his hands together in that sort of weird downward triangular shape. The downward triangular shape, by the way, on the hexagram, is the indication of the womb, or the receiving, or the receiving sort of feminine aspect of things, right? But you'll notice that it creates the M under it, right? Now, again, if we take this as a sort of journey through months, right? What we've saw this month is that Trump has been overseeing the Ides of March, which is the season of sacrifice. We saw this, of course, with the Corona event. That was also another season of sacrifice, beginning officially on the 11/3, 2022, 11 days prior to the spring equinox. The M shape as well is also something you see with Yabu Long in its shape. And basically, the idea is with you see with the longitudinal waves, they have where they intersect, that 0 point where they intersect, it actually creates the M. What's also known in statistics as the bimodal distribution. If you were to apply this to agriculture, the bimodal distribution is in terms of the seasons of growing and harvest. Is that the seasons of growing and agriculture? It is the harvest itself. It's the point where basically you have the big drop off before everything gets tilled again and regrows, and before another big drop off. So and this also relates to the mem, which I believe is the 13th letter. So again, we're seeing the 13 as well. You'll also notice he's got a weird sort of fringe, which looks uncannily either like a yarmulke or like Trump's sort of dead squirrel haircut.
Squirrel.
You'll notice as well that we know it's Trump too, because the person after him, his face is scratched out, and you'll see that the elliptical barbed wire sort of pulls apart almost on him. Now that's basically Obama. That was the point where we're not in Kansas anymore, so to say, right? Trump took over from Obama, so hence his face is scratched out. He's also sitting like Obama in one of the famous pictures. He's photographed with his children, and he was sitting like that in a park. One of the sort of promotional campaign arts. So that's Obama, and of course the other one is Trump by adjacency or juxtaposition. I don't know if you have any other things you want to mention regarding these statues.
I would say that if you do a head count, you count 12, so it's the 12 disciples in the Last Supper, right? With, in this case, not the Lord, but the lady. So the 12 NPC disciples with the one character that is in the forefront, that is the one actually moving the story. That is another thing that I read there.
Spot on, yeah. So it's the archetypes that are at play, but primarily it's the 13th one, the Christ, if you will, the soul that pushes it forward. You'll notice too that a lot of it is they look like they were in the process of melting, but then it was sort of, there was like a flash freeze, if you will, and it was stopped. again, this is indicative of the shells or the stone or the ice. This is indicating this notion that we live within the corpse of the previous cycle continually, eternally. So the idea is that there's something stopping the sort of the centripetal regression back to the source. There's something that's keeping us in this material realm, and this is what, of course, we're going to go through and explore subconsciously and symbolically through all of this this piece. There's more to say on the positions and the poses of these individuals, but another one is I don't know if you can see my cursor there.
Yes.
But that is the shape of Israel. And I know because I've actually got an infographic which indicates it. That's the goal on height. That's the bit that they took. But that is Israel and, of course, Palestine as well, what's left of Palestine and Gaza. So the interestingly, if we were to take this through the months, that roughly takes us to, was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9. So that's 10, 11, was that October, November, and then December. So October, November, that's when you had around September to December, that's when you had the initiation of the 12-day war, right? Again, 12 again, relating to this notion of the zodiac. But so that's where everything started and began. There's something to say on this individual as well, but I don't think I have it in my notes. Or at least I can't find it. Maybe it's in another set of notes. But there's something interesting. Yeah, the Cyclops, and also you see he can't speak. There's the eye. Well, firstly, I mean, it's on his left eye, right? So you see his right eye is blind. So I believe it's the right eye is blind with the Al-Masih al-Dajjal in Islamic eschatology. Correct me if I'm wrong there, any Muslims or Islamic scholars in the comments, but the idea is that and this you find this with the eye of Ra and the eye of Horus. The left eye is that if the right eye is blind, the right eye is of spirituality. Again, with Chesed and Gevura, similar to that. Right eye is of spirituality, the left eye is of materiality. So what you're seeing is the materiality is what is pushing the Leviathan, if you will, the full cycle that you're seeing, of course, on her left cheek as well, which is the side of Gevura. So it's basically the idea that it's conflagration, it's a purification via the flame of the disintegration of the old that's going to pull us forward, that's going to drive this all forward. And then we see as well the moon there. And then, of course, this is I've interpreted this as a boomerang. So the idea is that everything just begins again, boomerangs round, cycles round. I don't know if you have anything else to say, and we'll move on because, of course, all of this is going to get dark and things are going to be highlighted.
Yeah, move on a little bit. We're approaching the 1 hour and a half, so. And the exit in the back? Yeah.
The exit in the back, yeah. This is something you see, and then, of course, the white rabbit. This is something you see constantly. Basically, the idea is that you have to get rid of the geist, of the knowledge of the sort of material world. Knowledge isn't necessarily of information. I'm not saying don't become like an idiot or something. But you've got to let go of the old narratives, if you will.
Yes.
So you can find that exit. Yeah. So I'll let you jump in. Do you have anything to mention upon that?
No, I can't make it's LC or no. You go ahead because this one I can't. Nothing comes to mind. LC.
So interestingly, so the first thing to mention, you'll see that coin underneath his foot.
Oh, right.
That is actually a 19, and let me get this totally correct. It's
completely missed that.
It's and let me find that. It's a 19. I believe it's called a corona, and it's basic. It's it's an Australian crown, which relates to the notion of corona, right? So it's a 1937, I believe, Australian crown coin. So let me just find that actually. I think it is. Yep, there we go. Which was worth, you guessed it, 5 shillings, right? So I've written something here, and this sort of breaks this down. So, as seen in IPEC Goat 2, the dualism of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the apple, or dualism, the apple reunifies into the lotus that is birthed from the mire of materiality. Lotuses are born of the marsh or the swamp. Hence, we go back to the draining of the swamp of Trump, or of course, MAGA, reversed Agam, that of the swamp in Hebrew. Notice the LC in the monochromatic tones of black and white, again, good and evil, to which LC adds to 15, or the 12 of the L plus the 3 of the C. Ya is the pronunciation of 15 in Hebrew. Of course, 15 relates to the Devil Tarot card as well. 15, there's 15 rungs on the ladder of Jacob's ladder, Masonry too. So it's the idea of sort of the limitable world itself, the 1 and the 5. So the sort of quintessence in this, perhaps the 1 of the spine, the 1 of the architect that maintains control over that quintessence, that fallen star, that hanged man hanging from the abyss of heaven by the cord, which is Latin for the heart. Hence, LC is the cryptogram for the demiurge, or that which is the 1, 2, 3, or 12 plus 3. LC is 1, 2, 3, 12 plus 3. The triune interplay of the cosmic force translated into the terrestrial construct that is contained within a biological and temporal singularity, that which comprises the abstraction of time and space that is definitionally man. 1, 2, and 3 summed also equals 6. So we're back to the 6 faces of course, the cube, the material world. There's more to that as well, of course. There's within the 3-dimensional world, you have 6 axes or directional vectors that one can travel to. So a number associated with the world of carbon, 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons as well. Carbon, of course, means charcoal in Latin. So literally, we are born of the sort of, again, the looming death of the previous age. We are born within the corpse of the previous age's fiery end. Hence the charcoal.
Could it be, given the association that we've been making between the US and Rome, that L and C are Roman numerals? So L would be 50, C would be 100. Although if it is 150, it would be CL, not LC. So LC, I don't think it is a correct way to put a Roman numeral. But do you see any indication there, any connection there?
Yes, I think it probably relates back to that 15, doesn't it? The 50 and the 100. So even in its inverted idea as well, you're seeing that the black, the darkness, the chaos precedes the order. So it's the idea you're seeing throughout all metaphysics, which is that you have to have the disintegration, you have to have the energetic disparity from the pure potential before pure potentiality can represent itself within the manifestable world. So it's the notion of ordo ab chao in a sense. It's this inversion that we actually see this there's an inversion all the way throughout society. I mean, there is no law, there's no international law. You've got basically gangsterism running the world. Trump is talking about building, a grand arch. And who's he building it for? And he says, I'm building it for myself. And somebody says, well, it's an arc to Trump, isn't it? So you're seeing this sort of ridiculousness, this inversion plague the world at present. And again, that's because we're going into that dark winter, the dark winter 12 of the L, which we saw precede there. So we can get, of course, back to the 3, the trimorphs, the immutable fire, air, water, so we can recreate the earth. Again, it's the same idea you find in creation myths, especially from the Semitic regions in Mesopotamia, which is that man was crafted and sculpted from clay by God, and God inputted into this clay vessel his own essence, a fractal essence of himself. Again, you see this in any creativity. Authors do this themselves. They'll put their own being or character or persona into the characters within the books. So it's a sort of fragment or fractal of them.
Right.
But so the idea is with the clay, to create clay, you need to mix water and the dust, if you will, right? The unbound particulates that sort of precede the congealing of earth, or in this case ice. So what you then do is you then have to fire it in a kiln. You have to dry it out in the air. So you see the three mutable characteristics there. There's also metaphors behind this. Consciousness going into that of pure unbridled consciousness, the water, going into that of sort of the will, which is the fire. You see this with Vili, Ve, and Odin, and in the Ve would be the demarcation, the air, where things dry, things crystallize, things find their place within the world, and they demarcate themselves from other things. So, and of course, so this is what you're seeing with the sea, right? And then that establishes the bifurcation, and that also then from that bifurcation re-emerges the lotus.
Yes.
So from the mire, from that chemical reaction that you see. So that would be my take on that.
I completely missed that coin. That's very interesting. Very interesting. And he's basically stepping on the coin, which is something that you would do when you want to take it later, but you don't want people to see, right? So that's interesting.
Exactly. Taking the crown, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that the crown is also the symbol of the Mashiach too. But this itself relates to the Geist. Again, they want the black sun, which is they want to eclipse the source through
Right.
distractionism. Of course, in its primitive sense, it's panem et circenses, bread and circus. But in a greater sense, it's the cyberspace we merge into through biodigital convergence. This is the dark enlightenment idea, at least narratively, that we merge into cyberspace, which is a sort of simulated Leviathan, a simulated Ayin, simulated nothingness, the simulated mind of God, a meta-theater, if you will. A metaverse, as they've stated, a universe within the universe. So the idea is with the corona is that you keep the effects of the emittance of the source, but you blot out the source itself, so it never has any effect upon the perturbation of the cycle. So therefore, you can maintain your position indefinitely.
Well, what you do is you mimic, and again, the mimic gloves, you mimic the source. You pretend, you put on a show, a reality even, pretending to be the organic reality, to stand in for it, so that when the timings are correct, instead of taking the opportunity for a real organic change if needed, you perform a change at the theater level, therefore perpetuating the theater, right? And if you remember, that's again another movie that I recommend to the viewers. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. They only get into the story. They are lost, right? And they get into the story when they finally pay 2 gold coins to the troupe of actors to play the tragedy, in this case, Hamlet, that they actually participate in, right? So they are not even aware consciously that they are actors in a play until the very end, right? And when they say there must have been a time when we could have said no, right? So it is a movie that you and I watched, but I recommend also for the viewers. I think they will find a lot there.
Absolutely. And the 2 gold coins, like the gold coin you're seeing here, and of course the Keter is just the crown, the corona, is just the sort of it's the what's the word? It's the sort of it's the cherry on top, the pièce de résistance of the symbolism, because basically what it's inferring, and what we see in Guildenstern and Rosencrantz are dead. Guildenstern, of course, means gold, a gold star, the soul, quite literally, the wisdom that you see. He's more intelligent than Rosencrantz, and Rosencrantz is this animalistic sense, it's sort of spirits, if you will. And so the idea is that it is I believe it's the crown of roses. That's what it means, Rosencrantz, if I recall correctly. So again, it's the crown of thorns, right? That notion. You'll see at the end, the Antichrist or whatever figure you want to
And
call him.
the gold coin would also be to pay the ferryman to go to death, right? So
Yes, well, that's the soul. That's the imperishable metal. The imperishable metal is the soul. So the Keter as well is similar to that idea. It's the indwelling presence of the soul, or the Shekinah in Kabbalah. And that idea that we could have said no. It's the notion that, well, we could have just not engaged in energetic disparity, and we could have just, remained within the void. But then again, what would have been the point? What would they have been learning? And the idea is, with them hanging at the end, is that they begin the cycle all over again. They become the hanged man yet again, dangling from heaven. From you see it from the air, from the abyss, from the demarcation between this world and that world, the veil between. They hang by the cord, which is, of course, the heart. The LC as well, by the way. I think I have it somewhere here. I won't go off and speak about all of this, because it's really, I've got pages just on this. But the Masonic duality, game of chess. God, there's something else. Yes, there's right. So LC can relate to Lamed, and the C equivalent in Hebrew, from the sort of English C, is either Samed, or it's God, I forget the C, the other equivalent letter. But it's you can actually, LC can also be inferred as Lush, interestingly. And you'll notice that the C doesn't just look like a C. It's actually sort of broken. It's almost like a crescent, if you will, right?
Right.
And so when the lotus emerges from that, it's almost like the crescent and star of Islam. Actually, technically, that's not a traditional Islamic symbol. I believe it was adopted in the 20th century or so.
Yes.
So it's again, it's part of an eschatology. It's part of the narrative itself. So that idea is that, again, linking back to the secret of the moon, right? Again,
to represent what you were just saying, can you just move the movie a little bit forward for us to see that? And the star. Yeah, you can pause. Yeah. I see. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
And you'll notice as well, throughout this film, you'll notice again, I don't want to be impolite here, but you'll notice the ejaculate, these white spots everywhere. You notice it even more pronouncedly.
Oh man, you see cum everywhere. You have to to go on therapy, man.
Oh, come with me, come with me. So the idea is, with that, is that this cycle, which is controlled by the force of the masculine limitation, has exerted itself fully. It's exerted its, again, why do men ejaculate, right? Because they have the lust of a good woman. Of course, if you're a heterosexual man, you do. So the idea is that you're lustful about the representation of the divine feminine. Hence, you ejaculate, which is your will, is disseminated out through, of course, the phallus or the wand, the Hollywood, if you will. So therefore, what you're seeing here is that, like our own world, we're running out of sort of the verve and the vivacity of life, and we need a new modus vivendi to thus carry on. We need a recycling, a renewal. You'll notice as well with the vines and with the sort of black snakes that emerged, like the caduceus from the kernel, literally the nuke or the nuclear, the seed of the center of the thalamus of the hemispheres of the apple, the fruit. You'll notice as well they became rhizomatic, meaning that they entangled with one another. Now there's a metaphysical, sort of symbolism behind that, but I won't go into that here. But it ties in with what you're seeing in this idea. The lotus, by the way, is also related to the sort of dream of, I think it's Vishnu. He has a dream of reality while he's reclining upon it's either a lotus or a bed of lotuses or a sea of lotuses. So it's this idea of the continuation of the dream through the coincidentia positorum itself.
Yes, and supposedly the founder of the Tibetan branch of Buddhism was Padmasambhava, which means born from the lotus. So that is probably the lotus kernel there, or center. There would be like the golden child in a sense, right? So the emergence of the illuminated being being born in the harshest of winters to guide. It's a very old myth, right? Not old in the sense of historical sense, but old in the sense of been used and reused over and over again in several different cultures. So that symbolizes that too, yeah.
Absolutely, and you notice with the boot as well. Again, why the boot? Well, the boot refers to the reboot of the system, and the reason it has the silver tip and it has, of course, the cowboy. It's literally a cowboy boot, is because again, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of the sort of tenacity of the American spirit, and that will bring us, of course, into it. It's turned almost what's the word? Negredo. It's turned into a force of Negredo as opposed to a force that's sort of in its nascent stages, its pioneering stages. It's reaching the end of its time. You'll notice too that there's also a triangle. I don't know if you can see this. There's a triangle here pointing up. That is the force of the masculine. So the idea that when he starts sweating, it's the idea that the force of the masculine is losing its power over the feminine. It realizes that the reboot or the rebirth is, it's about to occur, the great awakening, if you will, right? And you notice it has a silver tip here because we are in, as opposed to later on at the end where he goes to the golden gate of Ophiuchus standing on the head of death, of Scorpio. We are still within the Orion, which is the silver gate. So it's this grand journey, and we're just at the beginning of it.
I see. So the male characters have finished the insemination, let's say, of course symbolically, of the feminine that will now be the mask of power in the new world, in the new facade, in the new narrative, right?
Yes, but they don't inseminate her. So the idea is it's almost like it's again, don't want to be impolite here, but within a lot of the structures of secret societies, a lot of it is masturbatory rites. So it's the idea of the veiled or sciatic Isis. Oh God, basically she's veiled, meaning that no man hath seen her naked, which is the soul. It's like an asymptote. It's like the horizon. You'll never reach the thing, but it's this woman that no man can get, it's this sort of, but they're filled with lust and they just pursue her to the ends of the earth. Again, it's a metaphor for man seeking to escape the sort of curse of the soul itself, which is, you continue around this cycle, you continue feeling constrained, even though you're king of the world. But the problem is the world itself will always be king over you, no matter what you shout out into the abyss, exclaiming that you exist, and you see this with the mysterious stranger of Mark Twain, the realization at the end where the mysterious stranger says you're just basically a thought a vagrant thought that is fleeting and traversing in a sort of stumbling, boundless manner through an abyss. And of course, Theodore Fisher states that I knew in that moment he was right. But the mysterious stranger says, don't let this stop you. Continue to dream new dreams and, dream better dreams. So the idea is that really all we have is the dream, which is the representation of our own unknowable soul while we are within the entrancement of the dream. So this is, of course, what Obama is sweating over,
and
in the
this
sciatic ISIS and all this.
This dream can either be an actual organic dream, let's say, that you build upon the actual perception and interaction with life in this reality, or it can be an externalized dream, which is basically, in general, what has been experienced, right? This externalized dream, a surrogate dream, a dream that isn't really a dream, or if you like to put it like that, a dream within a dream, right? In an inception sort of way, right? And you wake up from one dream to fall into the next dream that isn't yet your dream. Correct. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No,
but
you're spot on. All that we see
right.
or seem is but a dream within a dream. Absolutely, yeah. And that's why you see. Do you notice it's almost like so again, they're filled with lust, but they can't inseminate the sciatic Isis, the veiled Isis. You'll see it later on with Madame Q. That's what she's called, the old lady. She is she's imprisoned effectively, right? She is effectively the light, the white light of heaven, if you will, or of the semen itself, which is a sort of representation of that. So it's this notion that you see within man or the masculine that's attempting to find order within something that ultimately must remain incomplete and in a state of self-referential paradox for existence and for itself to be represented within the world, right? You can never sort of cross the T's and dot the I's here, because if you do, the never-ending story will in fact end. And no one likes, you don't open up the never-ending story and there's actually an end to it. That's no good.
We can go.
I want my money back.
We can go into that in the next episode, but could it be that the crone we see in jail that you say was Madame Q is the same damsel Erica Kirk that we see here? So later in the future, could it be possible?
Bingo. Yes, and now we're getting to the Jungian archetypes of the maiden, the wife,
and the
she
crone,
also goes, and the crone, exactly, which is also the puer and or the puella, which is of course the feminine variant, and that of the senex.
And in between, if I'm not mistaken, you see Kali, right? So Kali would be that intermediate stage. Yes. I see.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
Exactly. And you also see the crying mother, because Horus, or the sun, has died, and the sun is the representation, literally the logos, the word, the representation of the thought of God or the soul.
Yeah.
You'll also notice, just finally, before I finish on this, is that the fruit has, you see the leaves here, right, in the tree, or the branch, the stalk. You'll, again, the wand idea, it comes to mind, but you'll notice too, the reason the fruit is tempting is because it has the semblance of nature, but it isn't. But it, as you see itself, it is cut extremely fine and precise. Therefore, that a cut like that can only come from techne, or tools, that of the tools of the Geist, that of civilization. So it's the same thing you see with the problems of man. You're actually feeling, I feel it right now, where, when you actually feel this massive sort of unbridgeable chasm between civilization and the urban environment and that of the natural environment. And it's like night and day, quite literally, or black and white, So it's but here's another thing to mention just on that, is that you'll notice this the semen is on the west, right? Now,
Mm.
this is of, well, firstly, we have the West and Edom and Gevura and all of this and the USA. But interestingly, this is also found within the golden age of Saturn and Saturn's golden age and all of this. We read from Theocritus, Eclogue, lines 5-8, and this is the translation, the general translation from Latin. Now the last age by Cumes Sibyl sung has come and gone, and the majestic roll, like we saw of course, the rolling of the cycle of the apple, of circling centuries begins anew, again, the circles of the apple. Astrea returns. Astrea is, if I recall correctly, it comes from the same root as Estra or Eostra, Easter, the dawn,
Easter,
quite
yes.
literally.
Yeah.
Return, and again, this is the maiden reborn anew from the old crone, the new cycle. Return, old Saturn's reign of the golden age, with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. So the idea is that, of course, new men will populate this. This is what you see in Kabbalah with the Gilgul and the Gilgulim, which is literally the wheel, the people that are cycled through the wheels. And this isn't known by many Christians who, claim to be Zionists. A lot of them don't know what's actually in the Jewish holy books. They believe in incarnation. They don't believe in heaven. There is no heaven and there's no afterlife, or no paradise, at least within that of Judaism or Kabbalah. They only have the idea of the Ha'olam Haba, but that is a purely material thing that will come after, of course, the tikkun or the rectification. But they have this idea of incarnation, but the incarnation shall stop right as, of course, we hit the midnight, right? So as soon as we're about, this is their idea. I'm not saying this is going to actually happen or if this is real, but as we sort of progress into this Armageddon state, the people that are still here and survive it, they will have known Gilgul or the sort of cycles of incarnation. But the ones that are born they will be the new men sent down from heaven. They will never have known the cycles of incarnation. They shall have never incarnated before. So they will be completely rewashed, renewed souls born anew, if you will. So this is the idea. And just really quickly as well, we see, if I can find the bloody thing, because I just lost it. There's another idea regarding the West and Saturn. Oh, here we go. Bloody hell. It's right in front of my face. So in the legend of High Brazil, which is a utopian island off the coast of Britannia, Utopia, or the place of nothingness, the place of the Ayin, is related to the
Tuatha De Danann, yes.
Exactly, bingo. This is all tied in with Kabbalah and these concepts. H.S. Versnell wrote, quote, as the geographical horizon expanded, Kronos moved even further to the west, where he was identified with similar deities such as Saturnus. Eventually, we find him on a utopian island west of Britannia, where he is represented as either asleep or in chains, unquote. And also, as well, Saturn was referred to within the Akkadian records of Borsippa as the star of the Amorite land, also known as the Black Star, the Mulge. It was also known as the Mul Shakurmartu, or the Star of the Amorites. Of course, you have Amorite, America. You also had Brittany, Amorica, the place where the Jacobin Society orchestrated the French Revolution from, the Mothers of Darkness Castle of the Chateau de Amargois, the Chateau of the Amorites. And the Amorites are the proto-Hyksos, and the Hyksos are the proto-Hebrews or proto-Israelites, of course, proto-Canaanites. So you have all of these connections. Corona as well, CERN, the horn, the Spartan, what's it called? The Carnau. They're all connected etymologically and linguistically, and they go right back to both Saturn, to the goat as well, interestingly. There's connections there, symbolically. So it's literally, it's like It's like an entangled vine of symbolism here. We'll go on and just finish this, man. Sorry, I've kept you a bit.
Well, I think honestly, it would be better. We're around the 2-hour mark. It would be better to continue in the next episode. We've advanced like 20 seconds or so.
Yes.
This is part 3 of 666 parts of this series.
We're getting a good response off this series, though, so we shall continue to the 666th episode.
where we'll call the 4 horsemen. Well, anyway. But yeah, I think it would be better to stop here and proceed in the next episode. I think we've nonetheless, even though only 20 seconds or so in the actual footage, if that much, we have covered a lot of ground. And as you say, the beginning of the animation has far more symbology than the rest. So I think we'll move a bit quicker later on. We'll see. Not that I'm concerned, but in any case, I think it would be a good time to wrap it up. Just note where we were, and we'll continue in the next episode, man.
Absolutely, man. That sounds good. Bingo. I do apologize for my rants. I do feel like I'm taking up a lot of time, but
it's who you are, man.
It's who I am. Yeah. Right, man.
I talk 5 seconds. You talk 5 minutes. It's normal.
Yes, it is normal in these discussions. Yeah, I tend to.
But it's perfectly. I'm just joking. So yeah, man, it was a pleasure. I hope the viewers also took something useful out of it, and I'll see you in the next episode, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one, man. And to everyone that watched up to now, have a good one as well. See you back for the next episode, not the last episode, the next episode.
Dito. Okay.